Well, good evening, everyone. Welcome to the sixth and final of the special talks celebrating the 100th anniversary of Glamorgan being a first-class county. Tonight, we are looking back on the 2000s and the 2010s, and we're in the company of four former Glamorgan players, plus another Glamorgan player who I'm delighted to say is returning to South Wales for the 2022 season. It's a very good evening and welcome firstly to Mark Wallace, Glamorgan's current Director of Cricket and the club's most successful wicketkeeper batsman. Good evening, Wally.
Evening, everyone.
Great to have you on board. And also good evening to David Harrison, the club's current assistant coach and someone who was a key member of the Welsh Counties team, which won the National League in 2002 and again in 2004. Good evening, Dave.
Good evening, everybody.
Great. Now, we're going to be joined in a few minutes by Dean Cosker. He's been coaching here tonight at Sapphire Gardens. Dean, of course, is another member of the one-day winning teams from 2002 and 2004, as well as being the club's most successful bowler in T20 cricket. Dean will be joining us shortly. I'm delighted to say, though, that we have as well James Harris, who, of course, is returning to Glamorgan for 2022. And of course, back in 2007, as we're going to be talking about a little bit later on, James had a dramatic and a very record-breaking debut in first-class cricket. Good evening, James. And also, we have a pre-recorded interview with Mike Powell, who featured in the National League winning teams of both 2002 and 2004, and a man who hit 25 first-class hundreds for Glamorgan, including a memorable 299 against Gloucestershire at Cheltenham in 2006. So we're going to be hearing from Mike. I've done a pre-recorded interview with him earlier on, and as I say, we'll hear Mike's reflections on his outstanding career. So hopefully you can all see the pictures, which are going to be once again accompanying our presentation this evening as we look back on 2 decades of success for Glamorgan County Cricket Club. Well, we ended our last talk celebrating the success of Glamorgan in winning the 1997 County Championship under the captaincy of Matthew Maynard, with our overseas star Wakar Yunis and as head coach Duncan Fletcher. And we also ended the last talk by talking about the advent of one-day international cricket here at Sapphire Gardens, with the first one-day international to be staged here as part of the 1999 Cricket World Cup, when Australia met New Zealand. And if you remember, New Zealand actually beat Australia. Well, we're going to start this evening in the year 2000, when we had another memorable summer, both for the club and its players. And that began firstly with an appearance in the Benson and Hedges Cup final at Lords. You can see here the match programme, or the cover of the match programme for the game, on the 10th of June, when Glamorgan met Gloucestershire. It followed a memorable semi-final victory over Surrey at Cardiff, where Matthew Maynard scored a superb 100. And of course, he followed this with another 100 in the final. We can see on the screen, hopefully, Matthew pulling a ball from one of the Gloucestershire bowlers. You can see Jack Russell behind the stumps and Mark Alleyne fielding at short mid-wicket. And Matt, one of the few batsmen to score 100 in both the semi-final and also the final of a one-day knockout competition. So, Wally, I'm going to start with you first of all, with a question really about Matt Maynard's strengths as a batsman. What made him so special?
Yeah, quite a few things, I guess. So, yeah, I sort of played with Matt towards the back end of his career. So he was captain when I made my debut, and actually I spent a lot of time in my early years actually batting a bit with Matt. So I would bat at kind of 7, and by that stage he was kind of batting at 5. And you knew somebody was pretty box office when you could hear people picking their newspapers up when you were on strike. So yeah, Matt's kind of game, especially towards the back end when I played with him in one-day cricket, his great skill was being able to finish games off. So, you know, to be the person who's batting at the end, knocking off the runs and making sure that the team was victorious. And I think a lot of those one-day victories that we had towards the sort of back end of the century and the start of the 2000s were kind of due to that kind of play. And Matt was very much part of that. Very dominant back foot game, very good against spin. And as everybody knows, you know, an excellent record for Glamorgan across all formats.
Yeah, Dave, just to bring you in here, anything to add about Matt as a batter? I mean, you must have spent a fair bit of time bowling to him in the nets.
I think a bit like Mark, really. I mean, obviously I played with Matt towards the back end of his career. And it was only probably 2 or 3 years previously to that I was actually watching him sign the stands as a fan or a supporter. So to actually have to end up batting with him for a couple of years was quite a surreal moment to start off with. But he was a type of player, like Mark said, he was a game changer. He had an unbelievable back foot game. He played spin very well. He was very dominant over a lot of bowlers, and it was a privilege really to spend the first part of my career playing with a Glamorgan legend like Matt.
Yeah, with a record of 54 first-class hundreds, I wonder whether anyone will ever surpass that in Glamorgan's history. He, towards the end of his career, we'll talk about that a little bit later, but he did go past Alan Jones's long-standing record of 52, Hugh Morris as well with 52 first-class hundreds for Glamorgan, but Matt at the top there with 54. But Wally, if I could come back to you, because Matt, of course, led the club to not only a series of one-day victories in the 2000, but of course he led Glamorgan memorably to the county championship in 1997. If you had to sum up, Mark, what Matt's strengths were as a captain, what would they be?
Yeah, I was a bit young to tell you too much about 1997. I was only 14 then, but I certainly watched it on would have been probably BBC Two then. So yeah, Matt was captain when I first made my debut. And I think like most of the better captains, it's about trying to make your players believe in themselves and feel like they've got a key role to play in the team. And Matt was a kind of a long-standing captain of Glamorgan, and that's certainly what he tried to do as a captain. And you know, he still takes that into his kind of coaching philosophy now. So yeah, that was sort of the thing which I kind of took. I'll be honest, when I was playing under him, I was scared stiff of him. You know, I was kind of, you know, that young and, you know, used to watching him playing on the television, that I just kept my mouth shut and did what I was told. But you know, just from observing, you could tell that he was a very instinctive leader, and one which, you know, all his players would follow him, and he certainly takes that into his coaching now.
Dave, anything to add?
Yeah, I think my sort of relationship with Matt started in a bit of a strange way. I know some of you might remember back in 1999, I was picked for the first game of the year at Derby on the back of maybe a handful of 17 games, and on the back of coming down in pre-season and bowling for a week as a net bowler. And then we went into the changing rooms for a bit of a debrief, and I was asked to go in the changing room. And Matt read out the teams for Oxford University and then going on to Derby. And I was being picked up by my grandfather to get back to college after net. So I was sat in the changing room, wasn't really listening, and then walked out and made my way to the car park. And I was dragged back by Matt and John Derrick, the coach then, and told I was playing. And I was playing within 2 weeks in the first team, which was a very surreal moment, having watched Matthew and the rest of the 1997 team winning that championship at Somerset only 2 years previously that I was watching as a fan. So it all started a bit strangely. But after that, obviously, as a leader, something I had huge respect for. A bit like Mark, really. I didn't say too much. I just sat in the corner and kept my head down and did what I was told, really.
Yeah, but unfortunately, on this particular occasion, as we can see from this scorecard, you can see Mike Powell, as he'll be telling us in a few minutes in the pre-recorded interview that I've got. He shared yet another century partnership with Matt. They shared a match-winning century partnership in a game in the semi-final against Surrey here at Sapphire Gardens. It was a star-studded Surrey team. I think they had 10 internationals in their lineup, and Glamorgan, even though rain had interfered with the play on the first day, Glamorgan ended up as victors the second day. I can remember Alex Wharf and Owen Parkin, and also Steve Watkin bowling decisively in that victory. But then it didn't quite go according to plan in the final. Glamorgan probably ending about 40 or 50 runs short of a competitive total. But we mustn't forget that Gloucestershire at the time were the one-day kings. They'd had a series of successes in the short format, and they had a very, very successful team under the captaincy of Mark Alleyne, Ian Harvey, the Australian all-rounder, Jack Russell. You can see some names there on the scorecard. Matt Windows, Tim Hancock and Kim Barnett at the top. And I know that Hancock and Barnett gave Gloucestershire a very useful start before Matt Windows came in and gave the innings some momentum. Wally, were you there for the final or not?
Yeah, I was. Yeah, so it wasn't like nowadays where you take squads of 15 or 20 around for final just in case everybody gets injured. It was pretty much a 13-man squad. So I actually had to go up there as kind of a reserve player. So I guess just in case Adrian Shaw was to get injured of the morning of the game. So I didn't even get a hotel room. So I actually went up on a bus, of supporters bus from Crickhowell on the day of the game, left about 6 o'clock. So I basically got to Lords in my sort of Glamorgan shirt and tie. I had to hang around until the toss was made. Once the toss was made and everything was okay, the teams were in, I was basically given the wink from John Derrick to disappear. And I think me and Hazza went into the stands and had a bit of a good day of it. But yeah, it was a disappointing result, I guess, for Glamorgan. But like anything, a good trip to London, a good trip to Lords, and one I guess people who are there still talking about now. A shame to lose, but a great innings from Matt, and still a great Welsh sporting occasion.
Exactly, and at the time to be runners up to Gloucestershire was no mean feat, and there were probably 16 other first-class counties who would have loved to have been there on the showcase event at the historic ground at Lords. Here's a photo of the Glamorgan squad. This is just after the victory over Surrey in the semi-final. Let's just talk about some of the individuals. And Dave, I'll come back to you first of all. We can see there, second from the left, a real Glamorgan legend. I was pleased to see the gentleman concerned, Steve Watkin, back here today, coaching in the nets here at Sapphire Gardens. Steve has had a double hip replacement recently. But Dave, for you as a young bowler, as you said, to enter into the Glamorgan team and to have Steve Watkin at the other end, what was it like?
Well, yeah, I mean, also you remember my debut, obviously only being around the group of players on the screen there for a couple of weeks during that pre-season. I didn't really know anybody that well, but obviously to play in that game at Derby back in April 1999 and just to actually watch Steve Watkin bowl live in a game was a great experience for me, and to speak to him during that game and trying to pick up a few things. And I mean, since that game, obviously I've known Steve a long time now, and it's great to see him back at the club today. And when I sort of transitioned into coaching from playing, Steve was a really good mentor for me and helped me a great deal as I started my coaching journey.
And on the front row, we've got two other current Glamorgan coach or people who are involved in coaching both Glamorgan and the Wales emerging cricketers. You can see their second left, Darren Thomas. In the middle there, a delighted Adrian Shaw. On the right, we can see Robert Croft. Wally, as someone who kept to Crofty for so many years, do you want to sum up Crofty's talents as a off-spin bowler?
Yeah, he was obviously a super talented off-spin bowler. He was an absolute nightmare to keep wicket to, if I'm honest. I dropped a lot of catches and missed a lot of stumpings off Crofty, which I'm sure he'd still remind me of now if he was here. But no, a super talent. Would always bowl well when there was something in the wicket. But I think that his great talent was being able to bowl well when the wickets were flat, and always wanting to bowl well when there maybe wasn't something in the wicket, and being able to pick up 2 or 3 wickets, or in a one day and not going for many runs when it was difficult. That was his sort of great talent as a spinner. Other than it was a given that if it turned on the last day that he'd be the one who'd invariably bowl you out. And then with the bat, he could perform several roles with the bat as well, being very destructive at the top of the innings. But also, scoring a lot of runs down the order as well. So, a genuine Glamorgan legend. He played for about 1,000 years, coached the club. So, he's just about getting ready to start singing there, I think, in that photo.
Yeah, absolutely. I'm not sure if Alouetta was on the playlist, but just behind Crofty, Dave, is another Glamorgan stalwart, someone who featured in the 1993 Sunday League team that won at Canterbury, someone who was there in 97 at Taunton, and again featured in the early noughties with you in the National League winning teams, as we'll talk about in a minute. Of course, I'm talking about Arthur, or Adrian Dale, to give him his proper name. Dave, could you just sum up Adrian Dale's talents as a Glamorgan player?
Oh, I think Adrian Dale's firstly a fantastic person. Obviously a very, very good cricketer. I guess we got reasonably close over the years because he was a Chepstow boy and used to play, against each other in league cricket. And I thought Arthur was a sort of fantastic cricketer across all the formats, really. And I guess probably went under the radar a lot in such a talented group of players, which are on the screen there now. And being a fourth seamer, how he bowled, how he went about his business with the bat, he was gutsy. Scored hard runs, and I've got a lot of time for Adrian Dale, and someone who I've obviously haven't seen for a long time, as he's moved on to pastures new down in New Zealand.
Yeah, he's a member. We actually had a museum talk with him a few months ago, and he was very proud to be saying that he was captain of the New Zealand over 50s team, and he's looking forward to playing for the Kiwis in the various international tournaments for the veterans. Wally, there's someone on the front row, though, that we really just need to talk about. It's front left, because it was someone who may not have hit the headlines in red ball cricket, but in the short format at this time, Owen Parkin, there, front left, he delivered some really, really useful spells. And of course, he wrote the lyrics for the team song, which I think the boys were about to sing there. So Wally, as wicketkeeper, just talk me through Owen Parkin's abilities. Yeah,
Parky was a sort of slow medium swing bowler. He's actually one of the first bowlers to kind of really bowl a slower ball a lot. So he used to bowl a sort of back of the hand slower ball, which was pretty good at in this kind of stuff. And yeah, a very useful foil to kind of your Steve Watkins and Darren Thomas's with a ball in this team. I mean, what he'd also be remembered for is 2 things. The thing you just mentioned then about writing the team song, which the guys all still sing now if they win a game. And also he was probably, well, he was certainly the worst batsman I ever played with as well. People tell me that Mark Frost, who still works for Glamorgan, was a pretty average batter back in the day. But if he was worse than Parky, I'll be very surprised. Parky was a number 12 in a team of 11 players, but yeah, what he missed out with the bat, he certainly made up for in character, and yeah, with the ball, he was very much an accurate swing bowler, and I guess an unheralded part of that team.
Yeah, I think in the game in the semi-final in 2000, I think he removed some of the danger players in the Surrey lineup. And as I said earlier, they had 10 internationals. But we've just talked there about some of our homegrown players, but there's one gentleman towards the back, someone who Glamorgan signed, and we've had a knack. We talked in the last session about Glamorgan acquiring the services of Roland Lefevre, and Roland being a key figure in the 1993 National League winning team. I'm talking there about the gentleman at the very back, far left, Alex Wharf, who had been, I think it's fair to say, Dave, Wharfie had been something of a journeyman cricketer, initially with Yorkshire, then with Nottinghamshire, but he played an innings with the bat, I think, at Colwyn Bay for Notts and impressed quite a few people, and was signed by Glamorgan, and Wharfie went on to be a key figure in 2002, 2004, and of course is now one of the leading international umpires in the world. But Dave, as someone who bowled many overs in tandem with Alex Wharf, just talk me through Wharfie's talent as a bowler.
Yeah, you're right. Obviously, Alex was signed by Matthew Maynard on the back of I think a good performance at Colwyn Bay with bat and ball, and joining us in 2000. He ended up playing a lot of one-day cricket. Actually, his role at times turned out to be, at the start of the pinch hitting era, where he actually batted 3 and then come on and bowled first change, and had a string of really good performances in our one-day team in 2002, 2003 and 2004, which actually got him into the frame of playing for England, and went on to play, I'm not sure how many ODIs off the top of my head, Andrew, I'm sure you'll know. I
think it was about 13.
There you go, and playing in Champions trophies, and travelled to Australia and the likes of South Africa, and on the back of his performances in a winning team that we had in those early 2000s. And I spent a lot of time with Alex. We shared a room for a long time. Played most of my first class cricket with Wharfie at the other end, and he's obviously during that time became a great friend. And it's great to see him now moving on from playing into his umpiring career, and he's getting to the top of his game there on the ICC panel, and you see him on the telly a hell of a lot these days. I don't think it'll be too long before he's a full-time elite test umpire, Talks.
Absolutely, and it's great, as I say, it is great to see Wharfie making the headlines. Well, talking about headlines in the year 2000, another key member of the Glamorgan squad of that year was Steve James, and here we can see Sid at Colwyn Bay during the championship match against Sussex, where Steve wrote his name into the club record books by making an unbeaten 309. Glamorgan's total there, 718 for 3. Again, a record total. A fantastic opening partnership as well with Matthew Elliott, who I know Matthew went on and scored 177. I think Powell got runs. I think everyone got runs then. But if I'm right, Wally, am I right in thinking that on this particular occasion, Sussex actually decided, after winning the toss, they decided to bowl first, simply because the year before, when Glamorgan played Nottinghamshire, the ball had gone round corners. Steve Watkin had a purple patch, and I think Notts were 9 for 5 or something. And of course, in the Sussex team was Tony Cotty, and I've got a funny feeling Cots might have said to Chris Adams, the Sussex captain, there's often a little bit in the wicket early on. Is that your recollection, Wally, of what happened then? Is that what you've heard?
Yeah, I didn't play in this game. I'm pretty sure Matt Maynard kept wicket in this game, actually.
Yeah.
I think I was playing for England under 19s or something like that. But yeah, I think that is as the story goes. Yeah, I mean, I think it doesn't do very much at Colwyn Bay at any stage at any time of the year. So I think if Cots was saying it might do a little bit early, it might have done a bit for the first 2 or 3 balls maybe. But yeah, it's the old captain's nightmare, I think, when you put a side in and expect it to seam around, and you tend to know within the first sort of few overs. I often think it's one of the worst things about being a wicket keeper captain, because actually before everybody else on the field knows that you've won the toss and bowled, and it's a bad decision because you're behind the stumps, you've got the best view of the ball, not doing a single thing, and the wicket being flat, and within a couple of overs you're thinking this is a bad decision, and you know that within probably half an hour or an hour all those eyes are going to be glaring at you. So Chris Adams was probably offloading a bit of the blame to Cots, but Steve certainly dipped his bread and took advantage. I think 309 was off the back of a couple of double hundreds or something else at Colwyn Bay as well. So he certainly took advantage of the small boundaries and short boundary down to third man for a lot of those 309, I think.
Yeah, well, Dean Cosker is now with us. Good evening, Dean. You were there at Colwyn Bay, one of your happy hunting grounds, Colwyn Bay. What are your memories of not only that innings, but Dean, if you could tell us about Steve James's strengths as an opening batter?
Yeah, good evening, Andrew. Good evening, all. Hope everyone is well. Yeah, very fond memories about playing at Colwyn Bay. Not necessarily always bowling fond memories at Colwyn Bay, because it was notoriously flat at long periods of time. But I think Colwyn Bay pitch generally was pretty much set up for Steve James, really. As an opening batter, he was certainly someone that could occupy the crease, and he had fantastic mental strength, and as I say, occupying the crease for those long periods of time is exactly what kind of bowlers thrived on. Glamorgan bowlers thrived on, because we would get our feet up and watch Sid play some really long innings at Colwyn Bay. I think I don't know if you've talked about it before, but he averages well over 100 at Colwyn Bay, doesn't he, Sid? I think. He just fantastic mental strength, fantastic occupying the crease, and just sort of wearing the bowlers down, really. And as soon as the sort of ball goes soft at Colwyn Bay with those short boundaries, as Mark's mentioned, you can really make hay as a batter.
Yeah, and a fantastic achievement. I've got a pre-recorded interview, which I'll play in a few minutes' time, with Mike Powell, who also pays tribute to Steve. And of course, in 2006, Powley came very, very close to joining Glamorgan's 300 club. At the moment, Sid is the only member of that, and how great it would be next year or the year after if we can have a few other members of the 300 club. In this particular game against Sussex, I think Sussex got over 350 in both innings, but still lost by an innings, which is something of a record. Well, moving on to the year 2001. 2001 saw Glamorgan in Division 2 of the One Day League, but Glamorgan won the National League. And we can see there Steve Watkin in his final year as a professional player, celebrating with Matt. We can also see Adrian Dale, but the gentleman I really want to talk about, again, Wally, I'm going to come back to you, is the person on the right-hand side of that photo. We spoke a few minutes ago about Owen Parkin as one of the unsung heroes of Glamorgan's successful one-day team of the early noughties, but it's Andrew Davis, or Diver, as he was known, because of course he used to dive around in the field so much. But there you can see Andrew Davis celebrating as Glamorgan have won Division 2 of the National League. So Wally, as someone who kept wicket so often to Andrew in white ball cricket, what were his strengths? What made him such a successful bowler?
Yeah, I think he's one of the quickest Glamorgan bowlers to 100 one-day wickets, wasn't he? I think he was a bit different. So he had a sort of bit of an awkward kind of action that you don't tend to see too much. And I think back then there weren't all the analysts and all the recordings of every ball which you get today. So actually a lot of people didn't see much of Andrew. So he didn't play a huge amount of 4-day cricket, just played all one-day cricket. probably back then the white ball used to swing a lot more. Nowadays, you watch them on the telly now, and one of the reasons they get so many runs is that actually the ball doesn't swing at all. It's straight up and down from ball one, whereas actually previously the white ball used to swing significantly. And Andrew used to swing the ball in, which again is quite unusual for professional cricket. And when you swing the ball in with a bit of an awkward action and actually a bit quicker than you thought he was, he was quite slippery as well. The amount of very good players he'd get out quite early, and especially kind of bowled LBW. Right-handers bowled LBW, and left-handers he tended to catch the edge and nick them off, and that was kind of his big thing. Was he was sort of, it's a bit of a surprise element of crikey, that's a lot quicker than you think it is, and being super accurate with that swinging ball early on. And he's actually got two young twin boys who are sort of in our junior ranks at the moment. One of them's a left arm seamer, so his boy's got a better action than him, so hopefully he can beat him to 100 wickets.
Well, mentioning the Glamorgan team, the National League Division 2 winning team of 2001, we mustn't forget that behind the stumps, as you said, Wally, was Matt, proving what a great all-round cricketer he was. I've included, Dave, this photo because I'm quite intrigued. Glamorgan wearing a red shirt with white sleeves. Now, for some reason, I keep thinking Arsenal Football Club. Dave, was there some reason why Glamorgan were wearing the same tops as Arsenal?
Andrew, I have no idea, to answer your question. Although I have got that shirt signed, the same style of shirt from 2002, when we won the first division, signed in my house. Okay. Dean. It's not relevant to your question, but still.
Okay, Dean, was there a reason why we wore Arsenal style shirts or not? Or
I certainly hope not. And being a big Spurs fan, I probably wouldn't have donned that kit if it looked anything like Arsenal talker. But no, I don't think there was any correlation between Arsenal and that particular shirt.
Okay,
when we won that title, but I might be wrong.
Okay, I've just got a funny feeling that Mike Watkin, who was chief executive at the time, was a big Arsenal fan, and to see Glamorgan wearing an Arsenal style top, I might be wrong, of course. I'm often wrong, as you know. But as you just said, Dave, moving on to 2002, here we are, Glamorgan again in the changing rooms at Canterbury, having beaten Kent again in the closing game of the 2002 season, a repeat, another Canterbury tale like in 1993. We can see, I must say, Wally, you're looking exceptionally young there. Dave, I can see you there just behind Urge Mustafa, the club, the club physio there. Dean, I can see you holding on to Mike Powell at the back there. We can see the rest of the successful squad. But Wally, let's start with you. Your memories of 2002 and that wonderful game, that victory over Kent to clinch the one-day title.
Yeah, that was kind of the first season where I played a full season of one-day cricket, as you showed earlier on in the picture before. Matt Maynard kept wicket a little bit previously, as did and then obviously Adrian Shaw and people like that. So I played the whole of that season. To be honest, I think when you're young and go into a really good side, my memory is just expecting us to win all the time, which you tend to grow out of that when you get a bit older. Once you've lost a few games, you actually be a bit more rational going into games, thinking, this side are decent and they might have us covered in this area. But I can remember just in being the naivety of youth, just actually turning up thinking, well, we've got a brilliant side and we'll probably win every game. As far as this game's concerned, I think we had a game left after this, so winning this, I think Kent were top. It was Matthew Fleming's last game, but Mike Kasperovich, who's there in the middle as overseas player, he actually played that game with a broken foot. I remember, which, you know, you won't get that nowadays. You know, the first sign of an injury, and, you know, your overseas players, be it Cricket Australia, whoever it might be, will be dragging them back for scans and rehab and all that sort of business. But actually, yeah, Kasper had a stress fracture of his foot, and he just said, just give me some painkillers and I'll play. And he was actually the guy bowling at the end for us to win. So it just kind of shows how times change. You know, Kasper was a bit of a cult hero, and, you know, for things like that, you know, he'll always have a high place in my estimations. But yeah, just you know, a great day. They're the sort of days that you wish you could hold on to forever. But yeah, it looks like I was a bit slow to get a bottle of champagne by the looks there. I think everybody else has got the champagne. But
yeah, I think you have plenty of other opportunities, Wally, in the course of the coming years. Lurks, your memories of 2002?
Yeah, obviously a very, very strong, successful team in 2002. And I think, and what always strikes me about our winning one-day trophies in the early 2000s or mid 2000s was that we had you know, as Wally sort of just touched upon there, we had a little bit of youth, and we had a lot of experience, but we all knew our roles inside out, and we all knew who and when certain characters were going to come onto bowl, and we all knew that we had to, you know, there was a lot of clarity in our roles when we were playing one-day cricket in that year, particularly 2002. We had a lot of youngsters growing up together, so Ian Thomas, David Harrison, Mark Wallace, all coming through the ranks together, and obviously myself, Mike Powell, Darren Thomas, sort of the next sort of the era after that. So, and then obviously, you know, Hempy, Crofty, and Steve James and Matt, and that era. So I think we had a real good blend of experience and youth, which I think was a key aspect in any successful side. But going back to the actual characters playing in it, you know, Michael Kosovich was a hero. You know, he led the attack, and Andrew Davis bounced off him really well, supported very well by David Harrison as well, and myself and Crofty knew our role in the middle of the innings. You know, we used to bowl a lot together, and we used to try and keep it as tight as we could, which obviously put a lot of pressure on the opposition. But I just think that everyone really knew their roles, and you know, and we all enjoyed each other's company. And you can obviously see by the scenes in that picture, we enjoyed success as well.
Yeah, and of course the behind the scenes as well, the hard work and the coaching of John Derrick as well mustn't be forgotten. I know in the last talk we did pay tribute to JD, and quite rightly, as the coach of highly successful Glamorgan teams, as you said, Dean, in the early noughties. In that particular game at Canterbury, Mike Powell played a really important innings. Here you can see him pulling a ball to the boundary. Paul Nixon, who then was the Kent keeper behind the stumps. We'll hear about Powley's memories in a few minutes of that particular game. But I just want to bring Dave, you back in, because as we just mentioned, Glamorgan were lucky in the year 2002 and again in 2003 to have such an experienced and such an all-round nice guy as Michael Kasperovich in the team. You can see there on the left, possibly passing on a few tips to the young Simon Jones, who we mustn't forget was one of the other emerging stars in the Glamorgan lineup. Just mentioning 2003, Kasper in particular holds a unique record in Glamorgan's history, because in 2003 he took 2 9-fers, both against Durham, 9 for 36 here at Cardiff, and then in the return fixture up at Chesterley Street, 9 for 45. Dave, as someone who was sharing the new ball and bowling, then stepping into Steve Watkin's boots, and to have Kasper in the attack, could you sum up Kasper?
I think as the boys have touched on there, Andrew, he has his impact on the club for the years he was with us was huge. The impact he had on those successes in 2002, the guys I mentioned in Canterbury, the way he led the bowling attack, the way he was within the group, the way he was within the dressing room. He always made you feel comfortable. Bowling alongside him, we'd always stand at mid-on, mid-off, have very comforting words, always very supportive. He's all-round top guy, and he just made you feel very comfortable when you were bowling with him. He was always there for help, a resource there, and he was a massive influence on the early days of my career, that's for sure. Great.
Now, Glamorgan's success in 2001 in winning Division 2 of the National League, and then in the year 2002 winning Division 1 of the National League, led to it led to an initiative whereby Glamorgan, plus a few additions, played as Wales against England in warm-up one-day internationals here at Sophia Gardens. And here you can see running out Alex Stewart. You can see David Hemp, who, of course, had played for a while with Warwickshire. Hempy had returned back home here to South Wales. And here you can see the successful Wales team that actually beat England in a one-day international here in Cardiff. Wally, did you play in that game?
Yeah, that's me with the gloves on, Higgers. Yeah, number 18. Yeah, I played in that game. Yeah, I mean, I think we basically hammered them. I think in the first game, there was 3 games. We should have won the second one as well, the year after. But I think we bottled it. But that game was a bit of a non-event, really. I think we might have won the toss, bowled, knocked them over, and I think we knocked them off. You'll be able to correct me here, 1 or 2 down pretty easily. So yeah, it was a good occasion. It's a bit odd, really, because obviously it was kind of termed as a Wales team, but obviously England thought we wouldn't be strong enough. So I think we had Jack Callis, I think, as well to sort of bolster our ranks. But yeah, it was good. It was kind of a good occasion. Yeah, a bit something a bit different.
Yeah, we had, I think as well, another honorary Welshman, someone who'd been on the Glamorgan staff back in the 1990s and was now playing with credit for both Northants and Somerset. Steffan Jones played in that game, and I believe Casper as well, an honorary Welshman as well. But let's just move on to 2003, because in 2003, we had the inauguration of the T20 competition. And here you can see the Glamorgan team, the Glamorgan batters, Robert Croft and Ian Thomas, coming out to open the batting in Glamorgan's inaugural T20 match at Cardiff in June 2003 against the Northants Steelbacks. Now, Lurks, I'm going to come to you because you, as I said in my opening comments, you are Glamorgan's most successful bowler in T20 cricket. Just talk us through what it was like bowling in the T20 format.
Yeah, I think obviously in 2003 when the competition started, it was kind of almost seen as a bit of a joke competition. It was a bit of razzmatazz, and the crowd, was to get a lot of crowd in all these stadiums, and it was obviously a very, very new product. And then obviously by the time I finished in 2016, the competition had just evolved massively, and obviously there was a lot more prize money in it. Internationally there was a lot of competitions around the world, so I think the focus became a lot more professional. But I remember some of those first games in 2003 where it was kind of almost a bit of a circus act going on. But look, as we all know, T20 has evolved massively. It's a huge marketing success now globally. And personally, bowling in it, it's a bit ironic, really, because you just feel that your best ball went the distance. The best ball you could ever bowl obviously went to the boundary. And then if you bowled a kind of ball that you normally get hit for 4 or 6 with, you actually probably bowled a dot or maybe even got a wicket with. So it certainly changed your skills as a spin bowler in T20 cricket. And I think that was maybe the hardest challenge that all spinners maybe found during T20 was adapting to T20, then going back into the championship form of the game. So, but no, it was kind of risk reward cricket, at the time, and you'd bowl some funky deliveries, or you'd bowl some some deliveries that you might not bowl in first class cricket, and see what happened, really. But no, thoroughly enjoyable.
Yeah, as an observer of Glamorgan's games in T20, I have to say, Dean, as well, your fielding in the backward point area, I think that's the one thing over the years. The level of the fielding, we've seen obviously assists on the boundary edge in the most recent, in the T20 World Cup recently in the Middle East. But Dean, in terms of, I mean, you were an outstanding fielder already at backward point before the start of T20. But when T20 began, were there any specialist fielding drills like there are today, or was it just a case of taking in the existing skills into the game?
Yeah, I think it was the sort of evolution of strength and conditioning coaches at clubs, which naturally saw you kind of performing a little bit more, agility skills in our warm-ups and in our practice days. So I think naturally we became generally better athletes. But I think there wasn't kind of any hidden secret. I think you just, in comparison to the fielding today, it was, that they are absolute machines now, aren't they? They're superstars on the boundary. Every single player from 1 to 11 now throws himself around as if they were all fielding a backward point. But yeah, the game has moved on so much, especially in the fielding aspect. And and you see these youngsters throwing themselves around the field now. They are genuine athletes, and I think that's down to how the game has evolved professionally, and diet and strength and conditioning and all that kind of stuff has just naturally moved the game on. And T20 and 100 have now even pushed it on again. But as a young fielder at backward point, I tried to sort of always outfield the master that was Maynard. Him and Tony Cotley were kind of seen in these sort of gun fielders at point and cover, and I just tried to emulate them and try to sort of fill their shoes eventually.
Well, in 2004, Ian Thomas, who we can see here in the next photo, hit the first ever 100 for Glamorgan in T20 cricket. He made an unbeaten 116 against Somerset at Taunton. Now, Wally, I think you were in the team that day in the West Country. Ian's innings still stands as the highest by a Glamorgan player in T20 cricket. What are your memories, Wally, of Ian's innings?
Yeah, he'll certainly tell you if you see him now that he's still the record holder for Glamorgan in T20 cricket. I think it was 116, something like that. Yeah, I mean, I was actually next in for most of it. Yeah, Taunton being Taunton, there's a lot of bowlers who've taken a bit of a thrashing at Taunton over the years. I know it wasn't one of Hazard's particularly strong stomping grounds with the ball. But yeah, Ian's innings that day, he's a very talented ball striker, and he whacked a few out of the park into the churches, and famously won through a window as well. So yeah, that was a real defining moment for Ian as a cricketer, and one he still talks about regularly today.
And of course, quite rightly. Well, Glamorgan, there's the squad from 2004 that went on to play at T20 Finals day at Edgbaston, meeting the Leicestershire Foxes in the semi-final. Dave, it didn't quite go according to plan, though, did it? I don't know what your memories were of the semi-final at Edgbaston back in 2004.
Sorry, Chuck, I'm still laughing at some of the pictures on the screen. Yeah, obviously 2004, I was there. I was left out of the team. I think if I had played, we probably would have got through to the final. But I've let that go. It's fine. I don't have too much memory about the Edgbaston semi-final. What I do remember is obviously I've never been to a game where there were so many people there. Obviously, the finals day, Edgbaston, 25,000 people. I've been to Lord's, once or twice before that, but not been to a stadium where there was such an unbelievable atmosphere, and the crowd it was packed to the rafters, and that was probably one of the main things I remember from that day, really, rather than the actual game.
Yeah, Lurks, anything to add?
Yeah, unfortunately, I think I broke my finger that year, and I certainly missed the quarterfinal. I think I broke my finger in 2004 in one of the later championship games, fielding at Gully, and that was a story where Adrian Mustafa thought that it was dislocated, and he tried to put it back in, but actually it was broken. He actually made it 10 times worse, which actually meant I missed finals day. So yeah, I think I've got a bit of bittersweet around 2004 finals day, really, Chalks.
Yeah.
But again, I think looking back on it, I think group stages we were particularly strong again in that year, and we had a formula that worked. I think, and as sort of Hazard just mentioned, I think the occasion probably got to a few of the boys that day. If I was being totally honest, I was there sort of as a spectator in the dugout, and I just felt that, yeah, maybe it was just an occasion, maybe just a step too far for us. We were kind of almost happy we actually got to finals day, almost a kind of relief after all the hard work that went into it, and then actually forgot to play in the semi. But we had a very strong, talented side with obviously Ian Thomas at the top of the audience and very talented bowlers. So yeah, interesting time.
Yeah, well, 2004 though will be remembered for another champagne moment in Glamorgan's history, because of course we won the National League again. In fact, we won it, if I'm right in saying, I think it was on August the 18th, still with 3 or 4 games to play, beating Lancashire at Colwyn Bay. You can see the players there on the balcony or on the roof of the pavilion at Colwyn Bay. No Sky TV cameras like today, just the BBC commentary team, just a roving BBC film camera person. Wally, if I could just bring you in here, what were Glamorgan's tactics in 2004? Because we said about Crofty and Ian Thomas opening the batting. I think I'm right in saying that Alex Wharf, who we can see there alongside Adrian Dale on the balcony, I think Alex Wharf was actually playing a pinch hitting role at number 3. And of course, Dave also in some of the games as well had played a pinch hitting role before. But Wally, what was Glamorgan's secret for success in 2004?
I think one of our secrets was basically, I think Matthew Elliott got 1 million runs, didn't he? I think he got runs in virtually every game. I think could have probably just given the trophy straight to him. He was our kind of main guy. Yeah, there he is. So he got a bucket of runs. Alex Wharf did bat 3. I don't think he got many runs actually, but he certainly. We sort of went from 1 pinch hitter to 2, which was a bit different then, and then sort of the old similar kind of blueprint then, which was try and take some wickets up front, and then squeeze with his 2 spinners, bowling as many overs as possible through the middle. So similar kind of blueprint, but yeah, I'm pretty sure that the majority of that win was down to the runs which Matthew Elliott scored, and Adrian Dale knocked the winning runs off at Colwyn Bay. I think the ground was too small for Sky to have cameras there because it would have caused havoc with boundaries and stuff like that. But I can remember actually being gutted. I was next in, and it was the only time in my career when you needed like 1 or 2 runs to win, you actually wanted to bat. So I was kind of hoping that that Adrian Dale would chip one up in the air so I could go in and hit the winning runs. But it wasn't to be. He was far too good for that daily. But yeah, good memories of Colwyn Bay.
Looks. Had your finger injury improved by then, Were you able to take part? No.
No, I missed that one. But I was there on the balcony cheering the lads on, chalks as always. But I think again, as the boys have touched upon, the kind of success from 2002 really rolled on to 2004. We had a really good formula and we had a really successful plan, and we had some exceptional overseas players that contributed, hugely. And I think Mick Lewis played that year, did he?
Casper had been called back to Australia, and Mick Lewis came in as a locum overseas, and he contributed.
Yeah, that's exactly. So I think and Mick Lewis, and obviously got on with Matthew Elliott, the Aussie connection there. But he led the attack while Kasper was away, along with Andrew and Hazard again. So our bowling attack didn't really change, and as Wally quite rightly said, Matthew Elliott basically just scored a ton of runs up top and set the game up for our bowlers to kind of squeeze all through the season. But I think we were really dominant that year. As he said, I think we won the trophy with 3 or 4 games left, spare. And I think the great thing about that year was that every other county knew that we were the best as well. And I think half the battle for other counties was that they used to come to Sophia Gardens or wherever we played, knowing that they were up for a really, really tough game. And I think our aura in 2002 and 2004 really showed itself those years, because we were feared in one-day cricket, and that means a great deal coming up against the likes of strong home counties when you've got that aura about you.
Yeah, it has to be said that Glamorgan winning one-day silverware in '93 at Canterbury, winning one-day silverware again in 2002 and at Canterbury, and of course now we can say 2021 winning one-day silverware at Trent Bridge. Lurks, of course, you were there in your new guise as ECB match referee. But here we are talking about 2004, the one and only time when one-day silverware has been clinched on Welsh soil and up north in Colwyn Bay. Well, moving on to 2005, we saw earlier on Simon Jones learning his trade as a Glamorgan bowler. And of course, 2005 will forever be remembered as the year when Simon Jones became a member of an Ashes winning squad. Here he is. Ricky Ponting, unfortunately, has just nicked off at Old Trafford during that memorable test match in Manchester. Now, Wally, I suppose my next question to you is really in your new guise as director of cricket here at Glamorgan, but how great was it for you back then, but how great will it be for you in the coming years to see a Welshman helping to win the Ashes?
Yeah, I think that the second part of your question, I mean, I think that's the thing which we also desperately want to see, don't we? And that's, some Welsh Glamorgan cricketers, going out and representing England, that'll have such a positive effect on cricket in Wales to have, those role models to go out. And we've got some good young players who are potentially capable of doing it, but, so do other counties as well. And it is, so difficult to get that England shirt, and you can tell by how good England are at the moment, how many good players aren't in their team. So there's going to be a lot of hard work for somebody to do it, and somebody will do it, and hopefully it's in the short future rather than the longer future. Simon, he was the last guy to do it, and the shame with Simon was that the Ashes series of 2005, which he's remembered for, was kind of he hardly played much after that, especially for England, which is a shame. So that series is iconic in most people's memories, but it's also scary now that we've got players on our books now. Alex Horton, who's our kind of youngest player, was barely born when this was going on, and that shows how long it's been since we had a Welsh player playing for England. So it's certainly something which we want to certainly change as quickly as possible.
Absolutely. And of course, as far as Glamorgan as a club were concerned, the success of the England team with Simon Jones, the success of the Glamorgan team in 2002 and again in 2004 led to the plans being laid for the redevelopment of the Sophia Gardens ground. And here we can see the late chairman of Glamorgan, Paul Russell, talking there to, again, the late Cheryl Gillan on the left, and on the right, Alan Cairns, who then was the leader of Cardiff City Council. And the success of Glamorgan in the early noughties, leading on to the stadium redevelopment scheme. We'll come back to that in a few minutes' time, but I'm just going to move now to actually the pre-recorded interview with Mike Powell. Powell can't be with us at the moment. He's got coaching responsibilities at Dean Close School in Cheltenham, but I was lucky enough to actually talk with him during one of his breaks from teaching and coaching yesterday. And we're talking about Powell now because in 2006, it was a great year for Powell because he scored back-to-back double hundreds for Glamorgan, firstly against Essex at Chelmsford and then against Gloucestershire at Cheltenham. So here, if I just get the technology working, here's the pre-recorded film that I did yesterday with Powell, reflecting on 2006, as well as some of the other highlights of his career. Well, I'm delighted to be joined by Mike Powell, now employed at Dean Close School in Cheltenham. Mike, thanks for taking the time out in your busy schedule to chat to us. Obviously, you as the leading run scorer for Glamorgan during the first decade from 2000 through to 2010, many innings, but the two I'd like to focus in on would be your back-to-back double hundreds in 2006, a double hundred against Essex, and then a double hundred not too far away from where you are now in Dean Close, but at Cheltenham College. What are your memories of those two innings?
Yeah, I was in the patch of form really. It was quite strange. So the first innings was down at Chelmsford, and I remember Bicknell was the overseas for Essex at the time. I think Darren Goff was there as well. So to score, I got a double hundred. I don't know. I think it was a 220 or something along those sort of lines. I was really pleased to score a double hundred in the first bit, but pleased to score a double hundred against quite an experienced bowling attack. But I think to score a double hundred anyway, I think there are a couple of things that have got to be in your favour. Of the wicket's got to be a certain type that you like to bat on. The outfield's got to be at a certain pace, so the shots you slightly miss-hit will hopefully go a bit further for a boundary, if not end up being three. So, and obviously the game around you, so you've got to ideally bat first, or the opposition have bat first and haven't done very well on a very good wicket. So a few things have to fall in place to score a double hundred. And luckily for me, down at Chelmsford that day, things sort of fell into place. But I think the overriding satisfaction when I scored that double hundred then was, previous to that, the double hundred I scored was on my debut against Oxford. And as a professional cricketer, the last thing you want on your CV is your highest score to be against a bunch of students. So the fact that I got a double hundred against a first-class county was almost like a monkey off my back, and a huge sigh of relief as I did it. Yeah, so moving on from that game, we had a one-day against Middlesex. I think we did quite well in that, and I scored a few runs in that as well because I felt in good nick. And again, it was on a nice wicket as well. We quickly moved up to Chelmsford to play against Gloucester. And yeah, again, good wicket, good outfield, an attack that I quite liked playing against. And I had some experience of playing against some of their bowlers. But, you know, Stephen Kirby, John Lewis, who called back from the England team during that game as well. So they had a good experienced attack. So I was pleased to score another double hundred. I mean, quite famously, I suppose, for Glamorgan supporters getting out for 299 in that inning. So it was a strange experience to get out for 299. I've explained this to a number of people over many years. I got over 299. I remember getting 299. It was very, very hot, and I batted for the best part of 2 days to get to that score. And you know, you're cramping up and your blisters on your hands and everything that goes around with batting in those sort of temperatures for that sort of time. And I remember going into tea before I got to that score 299, and there was a little bit of pressure on from the captain to almost get on with it because he wanted to declare. So I felt a bit of pressure there, but the back of my mind, I was thinking, I'd like to score 300. And if I'm honest, I'd like to score Steve James, the ex-legend of the ball. He godfather to my children. His highest score was 309. I'd like to get the record for a Glamorgan batsman. And so I was sort of thinking about 300, but I was more 310. 310 would have been a better score for me and a bit of bragging rights for next time I see Jamer. But I was on 299, and I think Fisher was the bowler. And my thought process was, if I get out on 299, playing a reckless shot, running down the wicket, missing it against chipping one up to cover, I think that'd be tough to live with for the rest of my career. But I thought, right, if I get out to a reasonable delivery, I can live with that. So I ended up actually just defending the ball and got caught behind by the keeper. And it was a bit of a strange ending to quite a large innings, and it didn't quite happen for me. But reflecting back, and I said this to Jamer many, many times, it's just the fact that he's got the highest score for Glamorgan. He was a far, far better batsman than I ever was. It sits quite comfortably with me, with him having the highest score and me having the second highest score underneath that 299, which I'm sure will be broken, hopefully be broken sooner rather than later at the club.
Yeah, and I can remember that as Glamorgan's scorer sat on the balcony, and quite a few of the other statos were going through the record books, and there was another number and another name, the highest score at the Cheltenham Festival being 318 by someone who could bat, called W.G. Grace. And I think quite a few of the national journalists who were there on the balcony were sharpening their pencils and getting ready to write something or to type something out for the following morning's newspapers. But I guess, Mike, that must have been one of the highlights of your illustrious Glamorgan career. If we just go back to the year 2000, when you were lucky enough to be part of a Glamorgan team that made it through to Lords, it wasn't a happy ending in the sense that Glamorgan won a trophy on that occasion. But in the year 2000, together, I think, with Matt Maynard at the other end, you shared in a couple of fantastic partnerships, which got Glamorgan through, as I say, to the final against Gloucestershire. So going back to the year 2000, what do you remember about the semi-final against Surrey here at Cardiff?
It's interesting because that was the competition to win. If you take the championship is always the main competition, but you think about one-day competition, that was the one to be and experience a final. So going into the semi-finals, I think was split by rain. I think we finished the actual game the day later, and yeah, I used to love that with Maynard. He was so good. The opposition used to worry so much about getting Matt out because he would win new games on his own back regularly. You almost get forgotten about the other end. So I would quietly go about my work, and the main focus was always on Matt with regards to the opposition. So I used to love back with Matt because there was no attention on me whatsoever. So that was always nice. And when he was on song, which is regularly, he was just a force. He was an unbelievable force. The bat, he just made it look so easy, and the way he was almost he had full control over the bowlers, where he wanted to do, how he could accelerate his innings, how he'd slow it down, how he'd manipulate spin. I mean, brilliant to watch, and I had the best view at the other end, 22 yards away. So from my experience as a relatively young player then, a learning curve watching him bat with him and what he actually did to win games was just a huge help to me in my early development as a player. The semi-final you talk about there against Surrey, I got a feeling, I think they fielded 10 international players in that team, and 10 internationals, very good internationals. I think Holyoke was captain, Stewart, Thorpe. I mean, you could keep on going. Ben Holyoke played in that as well. I think that ridiculous
Yeah.
team. They were quite rightly going to that game favourites. We had a few things up our sleeve of it being at Glamorgan, understanding the wicket, making it very uncomfortable. And back then we had a pretty raucous crowd that used to come and watch Glamorgan, filled with predominantly Cardiff City football supporters who made it pretty uncomfortable for them while they were here. So we had a few things in our favour, and in the team we had then, and it carried us through the early part of 2000 as well. We all knew our role. We all understand what our role was within that, whether it was bat, ball or fielding. We had a good tight unit, which served as well. But again, Matt scored runs in that, did very well. I can't even remember what score I got. I'm terrible at remembering my stats. And
don't worry, but you remember as well, Matt, I think, became the first ever batter in one-day cricket to score 100, not only in the semi-final, but then to reproduce it on the centre stage at Lords in the final against Gloucestershire. Glamorgan didn't quite get enough runs, though, batting first. And then I think it was Tim Hancock, Kim Barnett got Gloucestershire off to a bit of a flyer. But Gloucester at the time were the best one-day team in the country.
Yeah, I think on that, I think we finished our innings relatively badly, and I think we started our bowling part of the game relatively badly. I think that probably killed us off like slightly. We were always chasing the game the second half of the game, but again, it was the competition, and we were up to win, and we were up against a brilliant Gloucester team, proven for probably 6 to 8 years that they were the best one-day outfit in the country, led by Harvey, who's still head coach down there. They're a brilliant unit. So for us to turn them over in a Lord's final would have been a huge ask. And you know, we gave it a chance. We weren't a million miles away, but I think we were better for the experience as a team.
Yeah, and let's fast forward through to 2002, where you played a leading role in the vital closing game of the National League season against Kent at Canterbury. Another Canterbury tale for Glamorgan, and a tight game with Kent having the likes of Steve Waugh, Paul Nixon, a galaxy of other stalwart county players against a Glamorgan team, including obviously yourself. Steve James, unfortunately, not able to play in that game at the St Lawrence ground because of injury. Crofty stepping in as captain, but everything else went to script.
Yeah, I'm sure Paul Nixon will be very happy he's mentioned the same sentence as Steve Waugh, that's for sure. Probably the first and only last time he's mentioned the same sentence. Yeah, in between that, I think we got promoted to Division 1 in the 4-day stuff as well. So it was quite a successful, I mean, from 97 through to 2001, it was quite a successful period for Glamorgan. I was lucky to be part of that. But going back to that game in Canterbury, again, we had some really, really good players in there. So we haven't touched on, obviously, Steve James, I think he broke his hand. You had Robert Croft in there, Matthew Maynard, you had Kasperovich, who was a brilliant overseas bowler. You had Adrian Dale. We had some excellent players. But with that experience, which disappeared pretty soon after that, 2004, and that 2000, it was all some younger players who become quite fearless younger players. And I think John Derrick can take as many plaudits who produced these players. So you could have myself in there, but I'd be the top of that age group in there. But you also had Dave Harrison, you had Ian Thomas, you had Mark Wallace, who all had their influence on that one-day team. But it was almost like a fearless factor that they came into this one-day experience successful, and they gelled really quickly and molded quite a strong one-day outfit. It was an extraordinary game. It was brilliant to talk to Steve Waugh after the game. I loved, because I think back then he was rated the best player in the world. So to come across someone like that, and you know, us to be playing so well in front of him was amazing. But I'm sure I think Fleming was captain of Kent during that game. I think it might have been his last.
It was, yeah.
And I think he was interviewed by Sky at the end of the game, and we were standing there listening to him. And he said, I think he described Glamorgan as an unstoppable force of cricket, and it was inevitable that we were going to win. And it was weird. It was during that time, the one-day stuff, it felt like that. It felt that we were the team to beat. We were a tight unit, and we were playing some pretty good cricket bat then, and it was obviously being recognised by the other teams, and there was like a fear factor as rocking up for one-day cricket. It was almost like we were going to win before we even turned up and the ball's been bowled. It was a brilliant time to play for the club.
And in 2004, the same thing happened. Glamorgan got onto a winning role. Yes, there were different players concerned. Andrew Davis, who also having played a key role in the 0-2 success at Canterbury. Alex Wharf, a great signing as well. And I think in 2004, then he was playing a role as a pinch hitter with Robert Croft and Ian Thomas opening the batting and going for broke in those early overs. What are your memories of that run in 2004 and then the victory over Lancashire at Colwyn Bay?
Yeah, it was for me personally, it was quite a frustrating time because I wanted to get in earlier. So I wanted to bat earlier, and that's how I felt I could have done more. But it was amazing to be part of that team compared to 2002 and 2000. I think I batted a little bit earlier. I think it was Crofty was captain of the team then, and he did a great job. He was interesting with Crofty. He hit the ball in some strange areas where bowlers trying. It's really hard to. He's quite unorthodox in his approach and how he batted. He hit in odd areas. It's hard to defend. And Alex, who was in there early as well, and Ian Thomas, who was around being a left-hander. I think that's where we were quite hard to contain as a batting unit. And my role was slightly changed where I'm looking to, if we have to consolidate, pick up more singles, pick up more too, try and be a little bit smarter in how I gather my runs rather than be a bit more forceful. Yeah, my role would change because I was a little bit more mature in my batting, so that's probably where I fitted in later on rather than early on. But again, it was the same feeling of we just really don't have to turn up here and we'll beat teams before you even rocked up. It was a strange time because we were slightly falling away in the 4-day cricket, but our 1-day cricket was still really, really strong and up there.
Great. Well, Mike, I know you're a very busy man at Dean Close in Cheltenham, but thanks very much for your time and thanks for your memories and thanks for all that you achieved on the field for Glamorgan as well.
My pleasure. Thanks, mate.
Well, some lovely memories there from Mike Powell, a Glamorgan legend, of course, the man who currently has the second highest score for Glamorgan in first-class cricket. So we've heard this evening from a group of the Glamorgan legends, and what we're going to do now is actually move on when I get the technology working. But what we're going to do is we're going to move on now to another period in Glamorgan's success during the noughties, and I'd like to welcome to us this evening, to our meeting this evening, someone who I mentioned earlier on is coming back to Glamorgan for the 2022 season, but back in 2007 was a fresh-faced 16-year-old. Good evening, James Harris.
Good evening, Andrew. Good evening, everybody.
Great to have you with us this evening. And here you were as a fresh-faced 16-year-old coming in to a Glamorgan team crammed full of legends. We've just heard Powley there eulogising about the successful Glamorgan team of 2004. Team that had won 2 one-day trophies. What was it like for you as someone barely out of school to suddenly be turning up and playing alongside some of your heroes?
Well, firstly, there's a very young man with a very bad haircut making an appearance in that photo, who's actually got a lot less hair now, as it happens. Pretty surreal. I spent a lot of my youth playing cricket at Ponte de Lice and sort of been involved in the academy a few years before, and spending a lot of time in the stands watching, all the guys on the call and watching them win one-day trophies and watching them play incredibly good cricket, and yeah, to make appearances then in the team a couple of years down the line was something pretty special. But in the way that my kind of career had gone to that point in junior cricket, it seemed fairly kind of natural. I'd sort of, in a weird way, been pretty successful, sort of turned up at games, took wickets and sort of went home. And that kind of continued all the way through sort of into playing in my early years at Glamorgan. So yeah, pretty surreal, but I was incredibly lucky to do it at such a young age. And I look back now as some of the young lads I see, you know, starting in first class cricket now and go, geez, I was playing 2, 3, 4, 5 years before they even made their debuts, which is quite a crazy thing to say, really.
Yeah, well, that you were 16 years and 351 days young when you made your Glamorgan debut against Nottinghamshire in the county championship at Trent Bridge. I know you'd been involved in a couple of the T20 games. There was a competition called the T20 Floodlight Cup. I know you played against Sussex down at Hove in that. But to rock up and then play in the county championship, we'll talk in a minute about your performances at Bristol. But there you are, going out against Nottinghamshire at Trent Bridge. You said it was surreal, but what did you feel at the time?
A bit overwhelmed, you know, honoured to be in that position. I remember my first ball was a long half volley to Jason Gallion up at Trent Bridge, and it went cascade into the cover boundary, and was a little bit sort of worried at that age. I mean, like, geez, is this a bit too much, sort of too soon? I think I got a wicket in my third over. I think it was with something like my 14th ball. I got Bilal Shafayat out, and it was caught by Matty Elliott, who was playing at second slip, and then honestly felt pretty much at home. You know, seemed to bowl. I bowled okay. Got a couple with the bat. Remember going back out as night watchman in that game, and then spent the last couple of the overs of one of the evenings batting with Matty Elliott, which was an absolute pleasure.
And then a couple of weeks later, Glamorgan play against Gloucestershire at Bristol. You celebrated your 17th birthday by then. But in that game against Gloucestershire, you ended up taking 12 wickets in the match. I think it was 12 for 118, and a spell of, or a return as well in the first innings of 7 for 66. What are your memories, James, of that game against Gloucestershire?
Well, it started on my 17th birthday, as you said, and my first memory of it was my mum not being overly pleased because she had to cancel my first driving lesson that she booked for that day on my birthday. So that wasn't the kind of greatest start in the world. I remember it being Simon's Jones is one of Simon's sort of comeback games after picking up an injury, and I have memories of it being really windy at Bristol. I honestly just got in a pretty good rhythm, and certainly in the first innings felt like I bowled really well. Bowled some excellent deliveries to get some of their players out. Bowled a great ball to Marcus North, which Wally actually took a fabulous catch diving across in front of first slip, if I remember it correctly. And then the second innings, things just seemed to go my way a little bit more. I had a couple of cheap wickets in the second innings, but no, it was a game really which kind of just said, yeah, you know what, you are good enough to be here and play at this level. And from that point on, I was, you know, relatively and really settled with what I was trying to do, and it's sort of, you know, a huge amount of belief really that I could achieve at this level, and even at such a young age, which which is a huge part for anybody going into any walk of life, really, to have a bit of confidence and belief that you can perform and achieve in that given task. So yeah, that was a huge couple of days of my life, really.
Well, we mustn't forget as well, here you are with the bat in hand at Swansea. And we mustn't forget as well that that season, 2007, the game against Nottinghamshire at Swansea, there you were proudly wearing the number 9 shirt, the Glamorgan number 9 shirt. I hope next year in 2022 we'll see you back in the number 9 shirt, and at the other end wearing the number 10 shirt, Robert Croft. And I think a few of the journalists were saying about what a great 9 and 10 partnership it was to see at a rugby ground like Swansea. I seem to remember, James, you got your highest score of 87 against Notts on that particular occasion. And my abiding memory as Glamorgan scorer that day was Charlie Shrek bowling around the wicket as we almost had a repeat of Bodyline. I don't know if you remember that.
I remember that really, really well. So that all came about, that all started really in my first game, because my first game was at Notts, as you said, up at Trent Bridge, sort of a month before this, or that particular game. And there was a bit of needle out in the middle. Charlie Shrek was bowling at me and he couldn't get me out for a little while. Anyway, he ripped out my stumps with a big in-swinging Yorker that ended up being called a no ball, and went a bit mad and started saying things to me. So a month later, when they came down to St Helens, obviously we were in a little bit of trouble, if I remember, and me and Crofty were sort of batting, and he was getting frustrated again that he couldn't get me out, and decided to come around the wicket. So I had a short leg. I had a man around the corner at sort of leg gully, and he proceeded to try and hit me, which he did. He got me in the ribs, and it sort of felled me for a little moment. But there was no way I was giving in or getting off that park in any way. So yeah, we managed to put on a pretty good partnership and put us back in a good position. It still irks me. That's still my highest first class score. I've got a one day list day 100, but I need to find a first class 100 from somewhere to sort of overtake that. And that was a really, really good Notts team. If I remember, that we turned over that week. Stephen Fleming was playing, Graham Swan, Dave Hussey, Chris Reed. That was an excellent team. So yeah, it was a really good win. And yeah, I remember Crofty getting wickets to sort of see us over the line at St Helens, as he so often did, to win us that game. And to put performances in to win games of cricket, especially championship games or first class games, is incredibly special. So to put a couple of big performances in early on in a career and sort of to more than anything, just to, everybody else in the team then knows that, yeah, he deserves to be here, was a really big thing.
Well, thanks, James. We're going to move on to 2008 now, and another delighted Glamorgan bowler, Dave. Here you are celebrating in 2008. Now, that was the year, and this is the game in particular, when Glamorgan reached the quarter-finals of the T20 competition. And this photo in particular, taken up at Durham, up at Chester Street. I think you just claimed the wicket of Paul Collingwood. Your memories of that game, and perhaps the T20 campaign, and the slightly unexpected scenario that Glamorgan had of playing in the quarter final and travelling up to Durham. Dave, your memories of that game?
Yeah, I mean, obviously it was weird circumstances. Obviously, we thought we were out of the competition, didn't we? And obviously with Yorkshire playing an illegal player, found ourselves getting into the quarter-final away at Durham, who I remember had a very strong side at the time. The likes of Sean Pollock were playing, Steve Harmison were playing, I think Michael DiVenuto, Dale Benson. They had a very strong team, and I think Durham ended up getting 145-ish. I thought, back then that was quite a big score in T20 cricket, and I think we fell short by about 25, 30 runs. But yeah, we obviously had a second chance against a very strong Durham side. Just came up a few runs short.
James, did you play in that game as well?
Do you know what? For the life of me, I can't remember. I was just trying to rack my brain. I remember going up.
Yeah, I did. But I remember we both played.
I'm sure I did. I remember going up on the bus.
Yeah.
It took forever to get up there.
Yeah, I actually do remember that bus journey. I reckon that bus was out of a scene, 1958, about that time. I reckon it took about 8 hours to get it to Durham.
Yeah,
it was shocking.
I remember traveling up with you as well on the team coach, and I think it was Sunshine. I think the coach arrived, and I'm not going to name the company, but on the side of the coach it said Sunshine Tours, and
the sun was certainly not shining up in Durham chalks. I remember that.
Yeah,
no, it was a long old journey. That I'm blaming that for us losing that game. Definitely.
No, but certainly in 2008, as I say, great achievement for the new Glamorgan squad. Obviously, several of the players we've talked about earlier on had moved into retirement, and the seeds were there. But rebuilding was taking place rebuilding was taking place on the field, and there was building taking place on the field, because during 2007, Glamorgan redeveloping the ground here at Sapphire Gardens, a year 2007 that saw Glamorgan head west to Pembrokeshire to play at Cresseli, a couple of games up in the north at Colwyn Bay, games as well at St Helens in Swansea, then back in 2008 to the new stadium. And Wally, if I could bring you in here, again, in your guise as director of cricket, to have the new facilities here, how important is it for Glamorgan to be up there on the international stage with a test match venue?
Yeah, I mean, it's super important for us to have a good ground. As you can see, we're able to attract international fixtures, which we have done since the ground was built, but also, of course, the 100 team as well. And without the ground, we wouldn't have been able to attract that team and the potential that's got for cricket in Wales as well. And there's a lot of nostalgia about the old ground. I certainly enjoy playing there, as most of the other guys on this call will have done as well. But realistically, if you look back as well, the old showers and the fact the heating didn't work in the change rooms and all that kind of thing. If you look at stadium everywhere now in all sports, it's actually all about spectator comfort and spectator experience. And the old ground was great, and a proper old county ground. But the stadium we've got at the moment, we're super lucky to have it. It's actually getting to the stage now where actually we're starting to do work on it again now, because it's starting to get old. Like I suppose we all are on this call, really. But I mean, ever since the ground's been in, it's a great place to play. Nice to have it full a bit more for a few Glamorgan games, but hopefully with a bit of success in the future, we can firstly get the Welsh government to let us have bigger crowds in, and then fill it up as well. So whoever's idea it was to be able to try and build a stadium, I think everybody thought it would never happen, but it did in the end, and we're lucky to have it. Absolutely. And in terms of 2009, how great it was to see the Ashes come to Wales. Glamorgan, as we heard in one of the earlier anniversary talks, way back in 1904, Glamorgan had made an application to host the opening test of the 1905 series against Australia. Well, 104 years later, it happened. Andrew Strauss walking out to bat there with Alastair Cook, a game that has gone down in the record books, not only for being the first Ashes test match not to take place in England or Australia, but a game that's gone down in the record books, excuse me, because of the actions of these two batters, Jimmy Anderson on the left and Monty Panesar on the right. They managed to block out in fantastically nerve-jangling conditions on the final day. The last 66 balls, the wiles of the Australian seamers, the spinners, were thwarted by Jimmy and Monty. The fifth and final afternoon, as I said, going down in history, and of course, laying the seeds for a hugely successful Ashes series. And obviously seeing Jimmy there, good luck to Jimmy and the rest of the England team when they start in the opening Ashes test next Wednesday in Australia. What actually nearly happened was Jimmy Anderson very nearly played for Glamorgan
I don't know, Wally, if you remember the circumstances when, in fact, the ECB wanted Jimmy Anderson to get some practice ahead of the England tour to Australia. And Jimmy Anderson was registered for Glamorgan. Lancashire didn't want him. He was registered to play for Glamorgan. There was actually an Anderson Glamorgan shirt that was produced. But Wally, do you remember the circumstances there?
No, I don't actually. No, I can remember Andrew Strauss playing for Somerset. They did used to do that a little bit back then, where they try and get the players some games. I remember, Strauss playing for Somerset being the one that I can remember. But Jimmy Anderson playing for Glamorgan. Now, I'm not sure about that. He has got a caravan in North Wales, so whether that maybe qualified him to have a game, I don't know. But find out, Higgins, it might be worth a few quid.
Absolutely. Well, he did. He was registered. And I think it was Saj Mahmood then got injured and Jimmy got recalled into the Lancashire team. So we can't claim to have Jimmy Anderson as a Glamorgan player, but it would have been, again, another unusual event in Glamorgan's illustrious 100 years as a first-class county. We're just going to finish off this evening by having a look at just some of the highlights during the 2010s. And it would be very remiss of us this evening if we didn't obviously pay tribute in a little bit more detail to someone who in 2010 achieved a wonderful milestone for Glamorgan. It's Robert Croft there, who's receiving a glass of champagne from two Glamorgan legends, the late and great Peter Walker on the right and the late and great Don Shepherd on the left. Now, earlier on, Wally, you paid tribute to Crofty's skills as a bowler. Lurker, as someone who bowled so many overs in tandem with Crofty, would you just like to also talk about Crofty's strengths as an off spinner?
Yeah, of course. Obviously, I played, the best part of my whole Glamorgan career with Crofty bowling the other end. He was a good role model when I first started. Obviously, I looked up to him a huge amount playing for England, and he was someone I aspired to be. Really, I enjoyed bowling with him. We won trophies together. We built up a lot of pressure in one-day cricket, and he was. One thing I would say about Robert Croft, he was a fantastic competitor, even in the nets and even in the indoor school when we were training in the winters. He was always trying to get you out, and I think he sort of took that competitive nature out onto the field, and that obviously proved, the proof was in the pudding with the amount of wickets he did take for Glamorgan in England. So I think that was one of his biggest strengths, that he was a huge competitor for Glamorgan, and he bowled his overs, and and he always wanted the ball in his hand. He always wanted to set his own fields. He always wanted to bowl on certain wickets, and he was, again, he was a fantastic bowler. He's a really good cricketer. And secretly, I did learn a lot from him behind the scenes. We used to speak quite a bit about game plans to certain players over the years, and through over the years he did help me, and it was a privilege to sort of play alongside one of Glamorgan's best ever cricketers. And obviously that day we look on the picture there at Swansea must have been a very proud moment for himself, and richly deserved.
Yeah, his 1000th first-class wicket for Glamorgan there against Leicestershire at Swansea. In the background, a very youthful James Harris. We're talking about the highs of Glamorgan, but we can see in the background there, sadly and tragically, someone whose life was cut short. The tragic death, of course, in June 2012 of Tom Maynard. And here we can see, obviously, the Glamorgan players shortly after that awful incident, the players playing for Glamorgan, but of course beforehand paying tribute to a man who could have followed in his father's footsteps and to rewrite the Glamorgan record books. And I know I was privileged to be in Llandaff Cathedral on the day, Wally, when you spoke so movingly about Tom, and we all obviously remember the days of Tom in a Glamorgan shirt. We're moving to 2013. Glamorgan reached another Lord's final. And here's a photo. We can see some of our contributors this evening. A very joyful Dean Cosker jumping into Michael Hogan's arms. We can see Wally about to sprint off. This is at the Aegeus Bowl, where Glamorgan, who began the game against Hampshire very much as the underdogs, winning a semi-final and clinching a place at Lord's. Wally, what are your memories of that particular game?
Yeah, the semi-final. I mean, I think you're right. We were pretty much underdogs for the whole of that competition, really. Yeah, we got out the group stage, and then it was straight into semi-finals. We won down there at the Rose Bowl to get through to Lord's, and we probably should have won at Lord's. We played Notts, who were quite star-studded. It was actually quite similar to what happened this year at the game at Trent Bridge, in that Notts had the opportunity to bring back, I think it was Graham Swan and somebody else.
Stuart Broad,
yeah, him, to play, who hadn't played a game all season, and they opted to bring them back and play, a little bit like Durham did this year, but with a different outcome. And we were actually on top in the game, typical kind of late season Lord's final. We won the toss. It seemed around all over the place, and we actually dropped a catch. I think we had them 4 down. We dropped a catch. We dropped David Hussey, who was kind of one of the sort of star players at the time. Gareth Rees dropped a beach catch off Andrew Salter at mid-off, which if we'd have got that, we'd have probably been into them, and they put on a partnership, and that's the kind of that's the small margins that we've got. Gareth's now actually on our board at Glamorgan, so that's probably me getting sacked in the morning for bringing up that drop catch. But yeah, it's small margins, and then they end up getting away from us. But it was a good season because, as I said, we probably weren't fancied by too many. That was probably the year when Michael Hogan was at his absolute best. He was an absolute superstar in that kind of period of time. And it was a good experience to play at Lord's, but bittersweet in that you go there to win and end up losing. So, but it was a good campaign.
Yeah, well, let's just go back to the changing room at the Aegeus Bowl. Here we can, Wally, we can see on the left as the skipper. We can see a very youthful Andrew Salter there. You can see Dean and also David. Obviously, Dave, by this time, Dave, you transitioned into a coaching role. Your playing career, unfortunately, had come to an end through injury. But what was it like for you as a coach to now see the Glamorgan team doing well again and repeating the efforts from earlier in your playing career?
Yeah, it was obviously a slightly change of role after I played, finished becoming I think a club record holder with my 10 overs for 100 at Taunton on my last game.
It wasn't,
but we'll move on.
Yeah, I didn't want to mention that. I haven't got a photo of the scorecard from there.
That's fine. Yeah, so obviously transitioned into a different role, 2011 and 12 as a kind of first team analyst and a coaching assistant, and Matthew Mott, who gave me that opportunity, which was fantastic. And I think to get to the final, and obviously looking at that picture there with guys who I played with doing those successful times in the early 2000s, it was kind of special to go back to another chance to win some more trophies as a coach rather than a player.
3 centuries and to take the system you're trying to break was forged in violence. Remember Cromwell? Nice. Well, you're going to violence just in pain.
On me.
Thank you. In terms of the final at Lord's, Here we can see Chris Cook bludgeoning a ball in typical fashion to the boundary. But we can also remember the final in 2013 as Simon Jones's final appearance for Glamorgan. I'll just pause because I'm getting a little bit of feedback noise from someone who's joined us. I don't know who that is. I could ask you to turn your microphone off.
We're seeing quite a bit of me in London. I like the songs productive. There's no fiddle.
Okay, I'll carry on, although if I could just say again, if whoever it is with their
it's all your fault in a way.
Their microphone on, if you
Do you remember
could.
that woman patient of mine who was charged with being a spy? You defended. She got.
There we go. I think we've got rid of the distractions. But anyway, here, just coming back to 2013 at Lord's, we can see Simon Jones there celebrating.
You put that. That's a bit aggressive.
Celebrating, as I say, the his dismissal of Titch Taylor, of course, now a man who is one of the England talent scouts, but an end to Simon's illustrious career. And we can see another player, another character of the 2010s, Graham Wagg, celebrating there with Simon as he's taken that wicket. Well, moving on in terms of the Glamorgan story, 2015, of course, saw England return to Cardiff to play in the Ashes again against Australia. And Dean, you were lucky enough to actually be part of the England setup in the 2015 Ashes test, because you were there, I do believe, as one of England's 12th men. And here we can see you being interviewed on that occasion by Nick Webb of the BBC. Dean, what were your memories of being part of the England team during the test at Cardiff?
Yeah, well, first and foremost, I think I was probably the oldest ever designated 12th man for England. I think I was about 36 at the time. So normally it was a job for these young, sprightly whippersnappers. But no, it was a surreal experience, actually. You know, I was lucky enough to do those duties earlier on in my career, but actually to actually get on the field for actually quite a long period of time, because Alistair Cook got hit at first slip, I think, in quite a painful place, and I was on for actually I was on for basically a whole session, which was again quite surreal at your home ground that you played at 20 years for, and to see the ground full, soaking up, full Ashes, you know, balmy army atmosphere was something I won't forget. I got a nice little ovation as I walked onto the field as 12th man. So yeah, it was a good experience, and something that sort of sits with me. And I thought, well, you know, I have kind of not quite represented England at the highest level, but I managed to, you know, to field for 16 or so overs in that environment, which was excellent.
Absolutely. And in terms of Glamorgan cricket then in the 2010s, Glamorgan very lucky to have two outstanding players, both born overseas. Wally, you mentioned Michael Hogan. We'll come back to him in a minute, but we've had, and I'm so pleased that we still do have on our books, and having seen him blast an 18-ball 50 in the T10 a couple of nights ago in Abu Dhabi. Wally, if you had to sum up Colin Ingram's strengths as a batter, what would they be?
Yeah, I think his strength is probably invariably his strength. He hits the ball super hard. I think there's probably a period a few years back where he was arguably sort of the best T20 player in the world outside of international cricket. And he just got absolutely buckets of runs for Glamorgan. And it's great that he is still with us. He's actually he's almost fully Welsh now, in that he's relocated to Wales. So he's experiencing his first Welsh winter now, having moved the family over from South Africa. He's having a little holiday at the T10 at the moment, but with Carl, he's still with us as a player. He's still got some good years left in him as a player, and he's also starting to do some coaching as well. So he was actually coaching my son the other day with Wales under 13s, which is great. But as a player, I think you can't really underestimate his impact on Glamorgan in T20 cricket during the time he's been here. Super powerful, hits the ball hard, and very basic as well. He's got the sweatband he's wearing there. He's got instinct written underneath it. And that's kind of how he tries to play his game. Just very simple, watches the ball and tries to smack it as hard as he can.
And just looking forward to January, February and March with Colin now, as Wally says, based in Wales. I'm hoping that we can actually have a museum talk in the spring with Colin Ingram, and we can reflect in much more detail about his success with the bat in hand for both Glamorgan and also briefly for South Africa. I mentioned, of course, Michael Hogan, and Dave, as a new ball bowler yourself, to have Michael Hogan in the Glamorgan attack, it must he must rank up there amongst some of the finest, not just in recent years with Glamorgan, but on the county circuit. He's one of the leading wicket takers in the last few years, Dave.
Oh yeah, absolutely. I think Michael Hogan's impact on Glamorgan, in the last 9 years has been massive. The level of his performance, day in, day out, week in, week out, month in, month out, every year has been unbelievable. And there's a fair argument to say he's up there with one of Glamorgan's best ever signings as an overseas player or domestic player. That's the impact that he's had on us. Having worked with him the last 8 to 9 years, the level of performance he puts in is unbelievable. And obviously, when he leaves in a few years' time, it'll be big boots to fill for what he's done over the period of time. It was great to see him at Trent Bridge this year, take that final wicket and win his first trophy for Glamorgan. I think it was his first trophy in his career, so that was really a really pleasing and satisfying moment for Hogs at Trent Bridge.
And James, as someone who has played, well, briefly so far with Hogs, but obviously be playing a little bit more, but someone who's played against him, if you had to sum up Hogs's strengths?
Geez, I think the biggest strength is you know what you're going to get from him day in, day out, and as a seamer, as an opening bowler, as a leader of your attack, he's going to run in and give you nothing and make you work hard for everything that you get, and invariably he's going to bowl you deliveries that you can't play, and that's what he's sort of done since he's joined. I've missed a lot of it, obviously, because I left as sort of Hogs joined, so we've played together a few times in the sort of couple of brief spells that I've spent at the club, when I've come back on loan and stuff, but I'm thrilled that I can spend, this year with Hogs and maybe more. So yeah, he's a brilliant asset, and yeah, the longer he wants to go on, I think the better.
Absolutely, and a great record, and I know he could end up being the most successful Australian in county cricket never to actually have played in international cricket. Just picking out again a few other highlights of the last decade. We mustn't, of course, forget in 2017, Glamorgan reached finals day of the T20 competition at Edgbaston. Jacques Rudolph leading out the Glamorgan team on that day, you can see there. Glamorgan losing narrowly to the Birmingham Bears in the semi-final. Dave, you were, again, in your coaching guise there at Edgbaston. What are your memories of T20 Finals Day?
Yeah, I mean, I remember it reasonably well, Andrew. I think, obviously, we were there in 2004, as we talked about earlier on. So back at Edgbaston with obviously the new ground, the new stadium, and obviously playing against a strong Warwickshire team. I can remember Warwickshire getting about 175, something like that, which I can remember at the time thinking, oh, that might be 10, 15 too many. We'll have to play really, really well. But the fact that we had Jack Rudolph, who had a fantastic campaign that year, Colin Ingram, David Miller, and likes of Chris Cook, I felt we had a chance of knocking them off, and unfortunately, it just wasn't to be. You know, a couple of blows towards the end from Andrew Salden nearly got us over the line. But again, a fantastic occasion, but shame we couldn't get into that final. We missed that again previously in 2004.
Yeah, and we mustn't forget that in that team as well, walking out there, we can see Craig Meshter, Graham Wagg, a very young Kieran Carlson as well in that team, and hopefully the disappointments there from Edgbaston in 2017 can be put right by the Glamorgan team of the 2020s in the course of the coming years. The last couple of slides this evening, just to finish on, of course, to celebrate the fact that Glamorgan in 2019, Sophia Gardens in particular, became one of the venues to host World Cup cricket. And of course, in 2019, the England men's team winning and being world champions. Of course, as Wally said as well, we mustn't forget that Sophia Gardens now, not just an established venue for international cricket, but also for the Welsh Fire, and how exciting it was last year to be part of the scoring team at the Welsh Fire Games here at Sophia Gardens, and to see the next generation of Glamorgan supporters, the youngsters coming in with their families, to watch both the men but also the women doing so well. And I'm really looking forward in 2022 to seeing further success. We mustn't forget as well the Western Storm, who last year played at Sophia Gardens for the first time, and great to see Mark O'Leary and other Western Storm coaches here this evening working with the emerging talent, both male and female, that we have in this area. Well, to finish this evening, and very appropriately with the Ashes starting next week, to finish this evening, someone who in 2019 came over as a little bit of an unknown player, someone who just cut their teeth in international cricket. I think there was as much concern as well amongst the media, chatting to my good friend Edward Bevan and Nick Webb as well, about actually how you said his name. And someone, though, who's left no one in any doubt, Marnus Labuschagne. It rhymes, of course, with champagne. And we've had a few champagne moments in 2019 with Marnus, and we're looking forward to further ones in the course of the coming years. So, Wally, as Director of Cricket in Glamorgan's ranks at the moment, you can have the final closing words this evening and in this series of anniversary talks looking back on Glamorgan's 100 years as a first-class county. You can, Wally, just pay tribute to someone who possibly is up there as one of Glamorgan's greatest overseas signings. So, Wally, a tribute, please, to Marnus.
Yeah, he's done pretty well for us so far, Marnus. As you mentioned, we sort of signed him as a little bit of an unknown on potential and on reputation of work ethic more than anything. But you know, from the start, he's kind of shone through. I think he's probably actually got a little bit of a way to go to surpass some of the great overseas players that we've had. You know, your Majid Khans, Kasperovich that we've spoken about before, Matt Elliott, and Actually, Mark Cosgrove's probably got the best record out of all of those. But yeah, Marnus has been fantastic. He genuinely sees the club as his home club, which I think is something special with overseas players. Is that he feels like he plays for Queensland, Glamorgan, and Australia, which is brilliant. He's obviously signed up to come back next year, and the issue you have with Marnus is he's going to be playing a lot for Australia. So the more we can see of him playing, the better. He's got an infectious personality. He's got a great attitude towards the game. I think he'll do well for Australia this winter, which is a bit bittersweet, but I think he'll do well. But hopefully, more importantly, really he'll hopefully come back and play well for Glamorgan for many years to come.
And who knows, Wally, there might even be another Glamorgan Australian in that Australian team that starts the first test, because Michael Nisa has been named in that 15-man squad.
Yeah, so we could have 3 if Usman Khawaja plays as well. So I think Michael Nisa would be really well deserved if he were to make a long-awaited test debut. He's played a few one-day internationals for Australia, and I think we all saw last year how good a bowler he is. His record for Queensland is brilliant, and I think his performances for Glamorgan will have helped him no end as well towards that test debut. I think if it doesn't happen in the Ashes this winter, it may well happen in the following Ashes if he can stay fit, because he certainly is a bowler that is well suited to English and Welsh conditions. So it would be great if we did have the two of them on the field. It would be a debut that I think would be well received both over here in Wales and also in Australia as well, where he's one of these guys who's very highly respected, and they'd see it as somebody well deserving of a debut. I don't think he'll play in the first test, but we might see him as the series goes on. Yeah, and you've just stolen my line there, that I'm spending the weekend going through the record books to find the last time that in an international team there were 3 people who'd played with this distinction for Glamorgan. So, ladies and gentlemen, this brings to a very fitting end our series of anniversary talks celebrating 100 years of Glamorgan as a first-class county. My thanks to everyone who's contributed to the 6 films, and this evening, my thanks in particular to our contributors. We can see several of them there on the final slide. My thanks this evening to Mark Wallace, to David Harrison, to Dean Cosker, to James Harris, and also for his excellent pre-recorded interview. My thanks as well to Michael Powell. Well, we've had a fantastic few months reminiscing, looking back on Glamorgan's 100 years, as I say, as a first-class county. And for us to do it in 2021, when, of course, only a few months ago in August, Kieran Carlson led Glamorgan to the Royal London Cup final at Trent Bridge. It's a sign that Glamorgan are close to further success, and we can look forward to a fantastic second centennial as a first-class county. And for the Glamorgan players of the future, for the Glamorgan archivist and historian of the future, I'm sure that there'll be plenty to talk about in the course of the next 100 years. My thanks to everyone, as I say, who's taken part in this series of talks. My thanks to you, ladies and gentlemen, for your participation, your very kind comments as well. And I know you've all enjoyed these talks, and we've got plenty to look forward to in the course of the coming months and the coming years. So I'll just finish this evening by saying good evening, North Star, and also at the same time to say I hope you all have a very happy Christmas and a pleasant New Year. We will be having a talk, hopefully, with Kieran Carlson and his family in a couple of weeks' time. There'll be information about that on the Glamorgan website very soon. And as I said, in the new year, a further series of museum talks. But for now,
that's an end to the Glamorgan anniversary talks. My thanks to you. Good evening, North Star.